everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the Panos Sessions. I'm your moderator, host, residential digital strategist, Jordan Julio. And we're going to be talking the future of web design for financial institutions. So here with me today, I have the pleasure of chatting with Mel Coleman, Matt Larabee, and Andrew Zeller. And I'll let you guys all introduce yourselves. So we can start off with you, Mel.
All right. Hi, I am Mel Coleman. I am the Director of Strategy and Media here at Panos. I have been with the agency for 3 years now. I was a former bank marketer and kind of just like a former marketing generalist for a long time. So I've had the distinct pleasure of working in a lot of different industries, but have really been with financial institutions now for at least 6 years. And I love everything UX and SEO. And so get ready to kind of geek out a little bit.
Love it.
Matt?
Yeah, I'm Matt Larabee. I'm the Director of Web Services at Panos. I've been in web development for a little over 20 years, 14 of those at Panos. So the ancient one on this call. But my team does everything from once we get the design, we build the whole website from there, add in a lot of stuff that we're going to talk about today. So I'm excited to get started.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt. Andrew?
Hello, my name is Andrew Zeller. I've been a graphic and web designer for 14 years and spent over half that time, 7 years here at Panos. Usually any website that comes through the building, I have my dirty little hands on in some capacity or another, and have some fun topics to talk about today.
Awesome. Thank you all well experts. I'm excited to get into this. But before we start, we are chatting about the future of web design and websites for our beloved financial institutions. I ran the numbers. I pulled some data from 80 different FIs around the country that we have worked with in the past. So with an average asset size of 400 million, I wanted to see how many new users versus returning users came to the websites, all on average. So for a $400 million financial institution, we see an average new user rate from the past year of 12,600 users come to the site. Those who are returning, 4,000. So what that basically means is that you're getting all of these new people versus all of these returning people, and there's quite the disparity. And so when you take that away from digital and you look at your branches, how many new people really visit your branches versus the returning? And I'm sure the numbers are just not anywhere near 12,000 or 4,000. So something to keep in mind. And that actually parlays me into my very first question. So why should every FI have a website, a CMS, and what are some of the absolute musts that a site should have? And I'll ask that to Matt.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Definitely when I think about the future of web and some of the things that we're going to talk about today, things like personalization, AI, voice search, omni-channel stuff, really to do all that stuff, you need a framework. And that's where a CMS comes in. So you need a CMS that's going to be able to handle all that stuff, all the nuts and bolts of everything beyond your website. You can make a website and put it up really in just plain HTML or something like Dreamweaver or one of those just website builders. But really, you're going to be very limited in being able to do some of these newer technologies when you don't have a framework in place to do that. So that's where you start. That's the most important thing before you do anything else, is you need to have the right framework in place.
Yeah,
absolutely. With that, kind of piggybacking off of that, what is the most important thing on your financial institution's website? Like, what's that number one thing that everyone should at least have?
I'm going to jump in really fast before Matt gets a chance, and that's content. And it's not just like, oh, like everyone has content on their site, but who is it speaking to? A lot of the sites that we see, and a lot of the sites, especially when we're starting a website project, we always obviously review the existing site first. And the number one thing that we see about it is that it's structured to mimic what's happening in your operations in the back end. So they're like, oh, well, we call it this because that's how it comes through. And it's like, That doesn't make sense to anybody outside of the bank or the credit union. So as we're talking about things, there's not a definition of why it's called that, or how do you use it? Why does it matter? Getting away from terms like checking even, and not to spending, but it's a debit card. That's what users are looking for. So to me, the most important thing, the thing that's going to get people to convert highest, is quality content that actually matters and speaks the language of your users.
No, I agree. That's a really good point, Mel. People, you are not your own financial institution customer-wise, if that makes sense. So basically, a lot of the customers and consumers are coming in with no financial knowledge background at all in the slightest. Again, I say this all the time. I just learned really what like the hard definition of a CD rate is in the past year or so. It's just confusing. And it's things that people in the industry don't really realize is that the lingo can get lost in translation very quickly, which then deters a lot of customers from opening that account, from applying for that loan, et cetera. So making sure the content is up to par is critical.
Yeah. Matt, I think I cut you off though.
No, I mean, mine was very similar. I would say purpose. Like,
yeah,
everything on your site needs to have a purpose. Like, you need to know why you're putting content in certain spots. Why, like, you need to know the psychology of the user, what they're doing on your website, and that's where data comes into play. You need to know that, all right, returning users are going to online banking the majority of the time, but new users are the ones that are scrolling down their homepage, looking at different places on your website, and then add content in places and have the right content appealing to those users. So a purpose, and that's really driven by data. So.
Yeah, everything we do, whether that's in Panos or just life in 2022, is driven by data. To that physical evidence and having that, that leg to lean on, like this is why we should do something, critical. So let's get into the fun stuff. I mean, let's talk gamification. Mel, can you let the audience really know what gamification is?
Yes. In its simplest form, it's just turning regular content and a regular kind of static website into something that you can actually engage and interact with as if it's a game. So truly gamification, turning it into a game. And for an FI, you're thinking like, okay, like we're not gamers. We don't have anything that you can really interact with. And really what we're saying is you should. This is how younger generations in particular, and every FI wants to get younger. So the way to do that is, again, by speaking their language. And that's, we're gaming generations. We're the ones that are rewarded for things that we have to seek out, trying to get to that next level. So taking those similar concepts and applying it here, and the biggest thing, and I can't say this enough, is as we're talking about community and everything else, and what is the role of a financial institution in 2022, it's an educator. You need to fill the gap. You need to build up the trust with the younger generations, but you can't speak to them. You have to speak like with them. You have to help make sure that they feel like they're in the driver's seat of that conversation. And the best way to do that is with quizzes, with ways for them to engage and play with calculators, and not just static calculators that are just text fields, fun ones. They need to be engaging and interactive. And Matt and I and Andrew, we've been talking about, especially if you have a blog or educational content, have them like get points and like little mini certifications. Like you have that knowledge in house, so just make it something fun. Matt, did I miss anything there?
Wordle for banks.
Yes. Yes.
No, I mean, yeah, Mel was right on. Like earning badges for education, like we know that a lot of the younger generation doesn't have the same education as the older generation when it comes to financial institutions. So being able to win badges that say like, all right, you're bank certified for home equities or something like that, just to help someone feel prepared when they're making a decision. They go through these steps, they win this badge, all right, now they feel a little better about themselves. They feel like they have some knowledge on this subject.
The confidence.
Yeah. Make a choice.
And I have to use this because the door's open. I was like, it shouldn't just stop at the website. It should also go to your products. You don't have 7 different checking accounts with all of the just slight tweaks between each one. Start with a basic checking and then have users unlock rewards based off of their behavior. You have that ability, just break down the barriers in between And then that's instant social content. It's instant content everywhere as people are automatically rewarded without having to do anything other than just engage. And then if people want to know how to do it, you have all the rules already ready to go. But that's how you just kind of shift banking in general to be something that's longer lasting, has a little bit more staying power, is by making it fun, because it can be if we stop thinking about our internal audience.
Right, and I would say a lot for the FIs is just making it, it's a differentiator. A lot of the community, credit union, the community banks, it's tough to say, but a lot of competitors offer the same things. It's just a way to be different in the market is offering that game piece, and that could really, be the one factor to get a customer. Going to one bank or credit union to another is, oh, we have gamification. Let me within a year I can go from this checking account to that checking account, and it's fun, it's interactive. I think the fast food apps and that industry do a really good job. I mean, mostly through COVID, of you buy an item and you get 10 points, and that 10 points can then be redeemed for a side of fries or a free soft drink or something like that. And it just makes it fun, it makes it engaging, and really puts the customer in the driver's seat, which is exciting.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, is you may be thinking, well, we don't have a side of fries to offer, but you do have other things that you can offer. And that could be something just as simple as free ATM rewards, or that if you have a CRM or an MCIF, and you can say okay, we can dissect debit card usage and say, okay, these users, this subset of users all have met this certain threshold and they shop local. Give them a $10 gift card to something local. And that's, again, what is the cost versus the benefit of that? Everyone wants a great reputation and they want to attract people. That outweighs any risk, and that outweighs the cost. But then, really making sure that it looks great is as important, because, I could have the coolest thing ever, but if it doesn't look cool, nobody's going to want to engage with it.
Absolutely. And speaking of looking cool and the design aspect, Andrew, do you have any thoughts on that?
I do have some thoughts on it.
Awesome.
Yeah, there's a whole aspect of it of, once somebody's on the website, how do you get them to care about it? How do you get them to engage with something that you're kind of developing in a gamification sense? And the number one thing would be just always keep it simple. If there is some gamification on your site and somebody has to go through multiple instructions on how to use it or what it's doing, you've kind of already lost. There's going to be a little bit of explaining, but you just want to keep it simple. And how do you get them to care or even know that it's there? And there's things that have to be thought of and designed. How do you notify it? Do you do some kind of pop-up? Do you do something like Clippy from Days of Old, and something just all of a sudden kind of comes in at the bottom? Maybe you don't want to be garish about it, but that you need to get their attention off what they're doing normally. You've got to kind of pull them away. Even something as simple as a red dot somewhere on an element in your navigation. We've all been conditioned now through our phones to see that red dot and have to go after it immediately to get rid of it. And so utilizing little design elements like that, animations of things changing on the screen, putting stuff in the logins, all kinds of opportunities to get people to actually engage with your gamification.
And that's something that we were talking about too. Andrew, Matt, and I have lots of random dreaming conversations, is about the user experience. So there is that holistic sense of, well, we don't want to disrupt the user experience too much. So that way people can they natively know how to go through a site. They know what to expect. Things aren't weird, even as you kind of start to change terms and layout. But you do want to disrupt it a little bit sometimes. You want to make them stop and actually see the surroundings once they're on your site. We've had a lot of clients do surveys before they go to launch a new website project, where they're like, okay, what do you like? What don't you like? What's great about it? Kind of sound off, and they'll send this to customers. And we've had customers say, oh, I can't find the rates, and the rates are in your main nav. Or they're like, I don't know where to find locations, or you don't have the ability to do people pay or Zelle. And we're like, we have this everywhere. There's homepage sliders. It's up in the nav. It's hitting you over the head. It's in every cross sell. But users are literally blocking out anything that's outside of their journey, because they've come there for a very specific purpose. And that's where we've started to really want to say, how can we disrupt this just a little bit? And that's with unexpected animation. where it's maybe slightly delayed. You get somewhere and then out of nowhere, something just kind of pops up like, hey, don't forget before you log in to online banking to check out, sign up for e-statements. Simple things that don't take away from what their overall journey is, but help to add and make them aware of the things that you already offer.
Oh, absolutely. And I just see a question pop up from David. Thank you. That plays in very, really nice to this current conversation. So guys, how do we segment out a traditional website, but also adding in the gamification aspect? How do we find that balance? What are some good ways to kind of appeal to both the new generation who wants to see that, but also not scare off the older generation who's like, this is not my speed. I don't want to leave banks, but I'm nervous.
So I'm an opinionated person. I've got lots of ideas on this. But really, the way that we're talking about content is it's not disruptive to your more traditional audience. They're still going to know. So like if you go from checking to spend, that's not such a wild departure that they don't understand it. And if you're going to jump into gamification, you don't jump in at the top level site. You have a section dedicated to it. You kind of baby step into it. It's an option for people. It's not a must. And that's something that you can then start to layer into social content and directing people to that specifically. But again, really making sure that, and this goes back to Matt's point of what is the overall purpose? We want people to convert. So making sure that that's still a clean journey for whomever is ready for it, but having these other options for users that need to feel a little bit more in control and then educate along the way. It's really, I think, kind of having them, keeping those journeys a little bit separate. Matt, do you agree or disagree with that?
No, I agree. And David brought up a good point, is how do you balance wanting to serve every customer with the same site? And nowadays there's a solution and it's called personalization. And this is something we've pushed a lot lately. Personalization a lot of times uses AI or learning of some sort to figure out what customer is going to the site. So based on their actions in the past, it can be based on eBlast, if they've opened an eBlast that you've sent, a number of things. But then you can customize your site for the type of user that's going to the site. So one good example of this is life stages. So you probably want different content on your site for somebody who is has a young family, maybe is looking for a mortgage, looking to get into a house, than somebody who is retiring, looking for help with investments or retirement, wealth management. Those types of things are very different scenarios. So personalization can figure out what type of user is on the site by their actions, by different methods, and then really give them the content that they're looking for right up front. So it can be usually on your homepage, but anywhere on the site that is a good need. So if it is someone who's a retirement age, maybe you think they might not be into gamification as much, so you don't push that with your personalization. But someone that you see as a younger user, just out of college, something like that, you might push that a little harder, and that might be upfront. So they're definitely a great method to kind of have your site serve many different demographics.
And we do love personalization from an SEO standpoint too. Google loves to see a site that is meant to serve the purpose of why the user is there. And not just having something like, hey, everybody check out wealth management, and then have everybody Gen X and below not really know what wealth management means. And everyone Gen X and above being like, okay, like Gen X is weird, so we're going to split that generation. Gen X and above be able to say like, yeah, oh my gosh, I'm not sure what my next steps are here. So from an SEO standpoint, personalization is great, as is great design. It all matters really from that standpoint as well.
Awesome stuff, guys. I think, yeah, I mean, it's really just finding that balance. It's with anything. No one's going to have the perfect website, but as long as the majority of customers or members are happy, that's all you can really ask for. So more on the design aspects, Andrew, what would you love as a web designer to see more financial institutions do down the line?
Well, there's the things I think we're going to see more of and the things I want to see more of. Kind of looking back at some polls that were done last year in 2021, won't come as a shock to most people who've been online in the past decade, but as we moved away from skeuomorphic design, everything is still trending to be more minimalistic, simplistic, even kind of starting to see more muted colors. And like I said, it's been trending that way for a while, but tastes always change in design. It's always kind of you're always trying to keep up with that because things are sometimes dictated by the big brands. Everyone's always waiting to see what Apple might do on their next sign, and then that flows down. So it's always a guess of kind of what's going to stick around and what we're going to always be following. But the things lumped in with that, like Matt talked about, personalization is only going to keep getting bigger. It's not going away. And like Mel mentioned with Google liking that information, we're going to see a lot more of that being utilized and kind of helping that user experience. Another thing that I think we're seeing a rise on, and we're going to see more of it in FI sites, are one-page websites. And you've probably been to a site that you see a navigation, and as you click on it, you realize you're on one really long page. Now, I don't think that's really going to work for financial institutions anytime soon. There's too many different kinds of categories and products, and it would really be a mess. But I do think that there's sometimes some hesitation in scrolling with financial institutions. They get scared once you've scrolled a couple times on a page. But I think we're going to see more one-page scenarios being adopted. Maybe if I'm a customer looking at checking accounts, it's a page that has everything I need on it. It's not just checking account, one page for that account, another page for that account. It's all the accounts, the products that go with that account, the accessories, the debit cards, anything like that nature. And so I think we're going to see longer pages in that sense being adopted from that kind of trend. There's a lot of little things. We're going to see animation. We already talked about it a little bit in gamification. There's kind of the UI element animations, the things that make things flow better on the page, transitions, how elements in a button work to make you know that an action is going to take place. That's always growing. We're going to see more of it in icons, see more of it in features. 3D elements, we're going to see more just 3D elements on a page. Utilizing 3D space on a page, you can click and drag around in a 3D space because tools are getting better, optimization's getting better, and internet speeds are getting better. So we're seeing more of that stuff. And we're gonna see more video. And not just necessarily, I see a square, I click button, video starts playing. I mean video that as you're scrolling down a page, you're actually looking at a video, but it's being controlled by your scroll. It's because it's a background element to give motion and texture there, and give a lot of these transition effects and just kind of more life to a page. And if I'm not taking up too much time, I think that that's a lot of what we're gonna see. Now, what I would like to see from financial institutions is all of that, but I want to find ways to make the designs a little bit more exciting in the financial institution realm. When everything went responsive, things started to get a little vanilla, because when you do a responsive site, everything needs to be compartments that move kind of comfortably to mobile. And we've gotten a little stuck in just keeping things maybe a little too simple. And to kind of talk about all those trends, I feel that banks are a little bit too slow to adopt to good trends out there. They like to see that something's been out there for a good while, it's been tried and true, and now we feel safe implementing it on our site. And I don't think that needs to be the case. I don't think you have to develop the next trend, but being more receptive to trying out some of the things we just talked about, 3D animation, video scrolling, things like that. And it's really gonna help you stand out because in fairness, I make financial institution sites, I make bank sites, but you can always tell when it's a bank site. They tend to stick to a formula sometimes, and you say, "Yeah, well, that's a bank site." The moment you go there, and they're copying their competitors, and so I don't want you to copy your competitor. bank down the street launches a new site. Oh, we want that. Well, why don't you want better than that? Let's not copy them. Let's have something a little better. And it takes more work when you do that. If I like to think about the feature on a homepage, you come there, and that's the number one thing somebody's going to see. Let's do more with it. And it requires more work. You know, is it going to be a 3D feature? Is it going to have animation in the feature? Is it going to have some of those 3D effects? Yeah, that's great. Let's do that. But then it takes more work and you get a little scared. But I would say embrace that more work. Put in the time to make this look better, because kind of the last thing I'll say about that is good design comes through. If you think about at the grocery store and you see all the, I don't know, sugar. I was at the store buying sugar recently. You see all the packets of sugar. You know which one's the store brand sugar by the packaging. And you could tell which sugar you're going to be going towards. Sugar, same sugar that everybody has. But the one, that packaging that looks a little bit better, you're more drawn to. So all these things, that good design does come through and makes you look more appealing.
That's awesome. Sugar example is very true.
Yeah.
I fall for a good design anytime.
Because a lot of the times, you know, people go to an FI's website really having a general idea of what to expect, but when it's framed differently and it's fun and exciting and pops, that's great. And another tidbit I wanted to mention was, yeah, you want to be the FI that is getting copied, not doing the copying, if that makes sense. You want to be the one like, oh, let's reference this FI site. Let's do that. Oh, I love that, what they did. Let's add it to ours. So really not necessarily being a trendsetter, but doing things just a little bit differently to draw the eye is critical. And I know we are almost at time, but Mel, I have one final question for you. And let's kind of circle back over to context. I know that was kind of a lot, but you know, all FIs really have the same products. And how could the conversation really be changed moving in the future?
Yes, just yes, it can be changed. Yes, you have the same things, but it's the way we talk about them and the way that you want to talk about them. It goes back to this educational component of making sure that you're explaining how products are used, because a lot of the younger generations don't know. And Dave brought up a point in chat where he's like, okay, but they're not coming to our site to be educated. And you're right. You're right. Like, unless they know of you and then unless they have a relationship, and even then maybe. And this is where content structure and SEO best practices come into play. And that's by structuring your content from a code perspective is critically important. Like, are you using schema on your site? Are you helping Google and all of these other search engines really to understand exactly what kind of content you have on there? And are you also using content natively throughout your site and not just in your blog that are answering questions that people are actually Googling? You know, like, what is a CD? Do you answer that question anywhere on your site? Do you answer what is the difference between a loan and a line? And so if you answer those questions and you have schema in place and you follow all the other SEO best practices, you will show up and people will start to engage with that content. And then they're going to start to understand, and this is organic, so it takes time, but you have to have something relevant to say to your end user, not just to you. And this is where all of it, you know, really the conversation we're starting to have with most of our websites now are, how can we structure this for life stages? How are these products used, not what are they called? So that's where we're getting into the spend, save, borrow. Online and mobile becomes things like access or manage. Instead of instead of wealth management, you call it things like financial planning or plan and budget, or you know, how to build a budget. Calculators aren't under Resource Center. They're not buried. They should be all throughout your site, because that's really what these younger generations want. It's what older generations want too. You know, they want gamification in the sense of, can I retire? I have lots of questions. How do I do that? And they may still be scared to come talk to you. So all of the content, again, and this is where design really follows, content and design really follow, is how uncomfortable are you willing to get to push your FI to the next level? Because that's going to dictate the quality of your site moving forward and whether or not you start to attract the generations that'll keep you around for decades more to come.
Yeah, on top of that too, like Mel was saying, like your website reaches beyond just what's on the web. So voice search, Alexa, Google Home, that uses schema tags on your website to answer questions. So if you ask your Alexa, hey, what's a CD? If you have those schema tags on your site, that's going to come up and read the answer from your website. Also, things like Mel was saying, things like calculators. The younger generation might not be searching for your bank specifically, but there's a good chance they're saying, mortgage, I want to use a mortgage calculator, or how can I figure out what my mortgage will be? If you're having content that's geared toward that, you're going to come up and they're going to use your website. They're going to interact with you. So there's definitely ways beyond them wanting to go specifically to your bank website to reach these younger generation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, in full agreement. The main goal of organic SEO is just to have the content and be that resource. That's what Google wants. That's what Google wants to show off to the public. So if you are that reliable source and so is your site, it's done itself. But thank you, everyone. That is all the questions I do have. I know we are just at about time. There are a few questions from the listening members here. So we will get back to those. Feel free to reach out to Panos directly. We can answer everything. But thank you, Mel, Matt, and Andrew. And yeah, that is really everything I have today. If you want to reach Panos, please feel free. Matt, Andrew, and Mel, would you like to leave your emails so someone could, if they'd like to reach out, and do that? And can wrap it up.
Yeah, just M Coleman at Panos Marketing, kind of that same formula, first initial, last name. Connect with us anywhere, and we'll certainly reach out and let everyone know of the questions that we get to, so that we can have those moving forward. But thank you all for joining us.
Yes, thank you all. It's a pleasure.